World War II on film took a darker turn in the 1970s. Vietnam had soured audiences on war glory, and filmmakers responded with gritty realism, morally complex characters, and unflinching brutality. From experimental masterpieces hidden in obscurity to Oscar-winning epics, these films captured a decade when war movies weren't about heroes anymore. They were about survivors. But which ones truly changed cinema forever? Let's count down the 18 most influential WWII films of the 70s, because the best war story is always the one nobody's telling you. Patton, 1970. George C. Scott refused his Oscar for this film, the only actor ballsy enough to match the real-life general's swagger. Franklin J. Schaffner's biopic kicks off with that iconic opening. Patton standing before a massive American flag, delivering a profanity-laced speech that still electrifies audiences 50 years later. What makes Patton so fascinating is how it works on multiple levels. Hawks see a glorious war hero. Doves see a critique of military madness. Even Richard Nixon became obsessed with it, watching it repeatedly during the height of the Vietnam War, an eerie presidential film choice that speaks volumes. Roger Ebert nailed it when he called Scott's performance one of those sublime performances in which the personalities of the actor and character are fulfilled in one another. The film swept 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, yet remains divisive. While some critics dismissed it as glorifying war, the film's true power lies in its ambiguity. Is Patton a hero, a monster, or both? The answer depends entirely on what you bring to it. A cinematic Rorschach test dressed in military uniform. Cross of Iron, 1977. Sam Peckinpah only made one war film, but holy hell, did he make it count. Set on the Eastern Front from the German perspective, Cross of Iron does to WWII what The Wild Bunch did to Westerns, strips away every shred of glory until all that's left is blood, mud, and shattered souls. James Coburn stars as Sergeant Steiner, a battle-hardened German soldier who clashes with his aristocratic, glory-seeking captain, Maximilian Schell, while trying to keep his men alive during the German retreat from Russia. The film's production was as chaotic as the war it depicted. Peckinpah's alcoholism and cocaine use spiraled out of control. The money ran out before the final scene could be shot, and Coburn had to forcibly remove the producers from the set. Orson Welles called it the best war film he had seen about the ordinary enlisted man since All Quiet on the Western Front. While American audiences ignored it, Star Wars came out the same year, European viewers recognized its brutal authenticity. Peckinpah's signature slow-motion carnage captures war's horror without glorifying it, a masterclass in how to film combat as nightmare rather than adventure. Overlord, 1975. This might be the most unique war film ever made, a haunting blend of fiction and documentary that somehow slipped through the cracks of film history. Director Stuart Cooper spent 3 years sifting through thousands of hours of actual WWII footage at Britain's Imperial War Museum to create this dreamlike journey of a young recruit preparing for D-Day. The story follows Tom, Brian Sterner, an ordinary British soldier who gradually becomes convinced he won't survive the invasion. Cooper's stroke of genius was how he matched his fictional scenes to archive footage. Cinematographer John Alcott, who worked with Kubrick, used vintage 1930s German lenses to create a seamless visual flow between past and present. Roger Ebert wrote that Overlord combines its newsreel and fictional footage so effectively that it has a greater impact than all fiction or all documentary could have achieved. The film won the Silver Bear at the Berlin Film Festival, but vanished for decades until a Criterion restoration saved it from oblivion. Its poetic approach to war's machinery grinding down individual human lives remains unmatched in cinema. A Bridge Too Far, 1977. Richard Attenborough's epic depicts Operation Market Garden, the Allies' failed attempt to end WWII by Christmas 1944. With its all-star cast, Sean Connery, Michael Caine, Anthony Hopkins, Robert Redford, and literally dozens more, the film portrays something rare in war cinema, a catastrophic Allied defeat. The production itself was a military operation. The film featured thousands of extras and real military equipment, including the last operational Lancaster bomber. The parachute drop sequence remains one of the most spectacular practical effects ever filmed, with actual paratroopers performing the jumps. What's remarkable is how the film refuses to sanitize failure or paint the commanders as villains, just humans making terrible mistakes at terrible cost. Critics initially dismissed it as bloated, with Roger Ebert calling it the longest B-grade war movie ever made. Yet, its unflinching look at military hubris and its consequences has earned it a strong reputation over time. Unlike most war films that end with triumphant victory, A Bridge Too Far leaves you stunned by the futility of it all, a perfect reflection of 1970s post-Vietnam cynicism. Tora, 1970. Japanese and American directors collaborated on this meticulous recreation of the Pearl Harbor attack, creating something unprecedented, a war film that shows both sides with equal sympathy and complexity. Producer Elmo Williams insisted on historical accuracy above all else, employing technical advisors who had actually participated in the attack. The movie's incredible attention to detail extends to using replica Japanese planes, though eagle-eyed viewers spotted they all had markings from just one carrier instead of 6. The attack sequence itself took a full year to film and cost $25 million, astronomical for 1970, resulting in some of the most realistic combat footage ever shot without CGI. Critics initially found it cold and methodical, but that's exactly what makes it powerful today. As one reviewer noted, Tora is nearly a documentary about the attack on Pearl Harbor, but dramatic all the same. By refusing to demonize either side, the film creates something rare, a war film about institutional failure rather than individual heroism. Slaughterhouse-Five, 1972. George Roy Hill's adaptation of Kurt Vonnegut's unfilmable novel somehow captured the book's surreal essence. Michael Sachs plays Billy Pilgrim, who becomes unstuck in time, bouncing between his suburban life, alien abduction, and his traumatic experiences as a POW during the firebombing of Dresden. The film won the jury prize at Cannes and earned praise from Vonnegut himself, who called it a flawless translation of my novel. What makes it revolutionary is how it uses time shifts, not just as a storytelling device, but as a metaphor for PTSD. Billy's inability to stay in the present mirrors the way trauma fractures a soldier's sense of time and self. Unlike other anti-war films that hammer their message, Slaughterhouse-Five employs dark humor and science fiction to make its points about war's absurdity. Its famous refrain, "So it goes," after each death, whether from natural causes or bombing, creates a devastating equivalence that haunts viewers long after the credits roll. The Eagle Has Landed, 1976. John Sturges directed this thrilling what-if thriller about a German plot to kidnap Winston Churchill. Michael Caine plays a disgraced German colonel leading a team of paratroopers disguised as Polish soldiers, with Donald Sutherland as an IRA sympathizer helping them infiltrate the English countryside. The film's revisionist angle was groundbreaking, portraying German soldiers as professional, honorable men rather than cartoon Nazis. As Caine's character Colonel Steiner says, "Before the war, I was a teacher of English. Now I am a professional soldier." The reality, I suspect, lies somewhere in between. This nuanced take on enemy combatants was revolutionary for WWII films of the era. Critics praised its taut suspense and moral complexity. The Eagle Has Landed works because it takes its outlandish premise seriously, grounding the action in authentic military details while exploring how duty and conscience clash in wartime. It remains one of the few WWII films where you find yourself almost rooting for the Germans. Lacombe, Lucien, 1974. Louis Malle's controversial film follows a young French peasant who, after being rejected by the resistance, joins the Gestapo collaborators instead. The shocking premise challenged France's post-war narrative of widespread resistance by showing how easily ordinary people could become complicit in atrocity. What makes the film extraordinary is its refusal to psychologize or explain Lucien's choices. He's not an ideological Nazi or a sadist, just an aimless young man who falls into collaboration through opportunity and indifference. Even more provocatively, his romance with a Jewish girl implies that personal relationships mattered more to many people than the grand ideological battles of history. Critics were stunned by its moral ambiguity. One wrote, "Mal forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that many collaborators weren't monsters, just humans making pragmatic choices in impossible circumstances." The film helped trigger a painful national reckoning in France about its wartime conduct, breaking decades of silence about widespread collaboration. Aces High, 1976. Jack Gold's unflinching look at the psychological toll of aerial combat follows British Royal Flying Corps pilots on the Western Front. Malcolm McDowell plays a squadron leader who's gone from idealistic recruit to cynical, alcoholic veteran in just 3 weeks. A transformation we watch happen to the fresh-faced replacement pilot who idolized him. The film's power comes from showing the devastating cycle. Recruits arrive, form bonds, die horribly, and are replaced, all while survivors maintain a brittle facade of upper-class nonchalance. The average life expectancy for new pilots was just 11 days, and the film refuses to soften this reality. One scene shows pilots calculating a comrade's survival odds with bets while he's on a mission. Dark humor as psychological defense. Critics praised its claustrophobic intensity and realistic flight sequences. Though less famous than other aviation films, Aces High stands out for its unflinching portrayal of how combat breaks men mentally long before it kills them physically. As one veteran advisor to the film said, "We weren't heroes. We were terrified boys pretending not to be." Midway, 1976. Jack Smite's star-studded epic recreates the pivotal 1942 naval battle that turned the tide in the Pacific. What makes Midway unique is its split perspective, showing both American and Japanese commanders with equal respect and complexity. The film used actual combat footage alongside stage scenes, creating a documentary-like authenticity. The cast reads like a Hollywood who's who: Charlton Heston, Henry Fonda, James Coburn, Glenn Ford, and Toshiro Mifune as Admiral Yamamoto. The film's reverence for historical accuracy extended to casting Japanese-American actors for Japanese roles. Progressive for 1976, when many war films still used white actors in yellowface. Critics praised its technical achievement, but found it emotionally distant. Yet this clinical approach actually captures something true about modern naval warfare. Admirals directing battles from hundreds of miles away, making strategic decisions that send thousands to their deaths without ever seeing the human cost. Midway presents war as a chess match played with real lives. The Ascent, 1977. Larisa Shepitko's Soviet masterpiece follows two partisans in Nazi-occupied Belarus who are captured while foraging for food. What begins as a survival story transforms into a harrowing moral parable when one prisoner betrays the other to save himself. Shot in stark black and white with snow-blinded landscapes that mirror the character's moral disorientation, the film has a hallucinatory intensity. Shepitko, who died in a car crash 2 years later at age 41, brings a distinctly feminine perspective to war cinema. Rather than glorifying masculine stoicism, she shows how moral choices under pressure reveal character. The betrayer's torment proves more agonizing than his comrades' physical torture and execution. Critics have called it the greatest Soviet war film you've never seen. Its exploration of moral compromise under extreme pressure remains uniquely relevant. Unlike American war films that often frame moral choices as heroic resistance or cowardly surrender, The Ascent suggests something more disturbing, that we cannot know our true character until tested beyond endurance. Soldier of Orange, 1977. Paul Verhoeven's breakthrough film follows 6 Dutch students whose lives diverge dramatically during the Nazi occupation. Some join the resistance, others collaborate, and most fall somewhere in between. Based on the memoirs of Dutch war hero Eric Hazelhoff Rolfsema, the film refuses easy moral categorization. What sets Soldier of Orange apart is its honest portrayal of how people actually responded to occupation, not with immediate heroism, but with confusion, compromise, and gradual radicalization. Rutger Hauer stars as Eric, whose journey from carefree student to resistance fighter unfolds not through grand moral awakening, but through accumulated personal losses and pragmatic choices. Critics praised its moral complexity and Verhoeven's kinetic visual style. One particularly shocking scene shows Dutch citizens brutally attacking a woman who slept with Germans, revealing how occupation corrupts even the victims. The film became the most successful Dutch movie ever made and launched both Verhoeven and Hauer to international careers. The Boys from Brazil, 1978. Franklin J. Schaffner's bizarre thriller stars Gregory Peck as Josef Mengele, hiding in South America while orchestrating a plot to clone Hitler and raise the boys in environments matching Hitler's childhood. Laurence Olivier plays the aging Nazi hunter on his trail. The film's outlandish premise masks a serious exploration of nature versus nurture and the lingering shadows of the Holocaust. What's remarkable is how the film shifts from pulpy thriller to philosophical meditation. When Olivier's character realizes killing the innocent Hitler clones would make him no better than the Nazis, the film forces viewers to confront uncomfortable questions about moral compromise in fighting evil. Peck's against typecasting as Mengele, the actor famous for playing Atticus Finch, now playing history's most notorious doctor, creates a disturbing cognitive dissonance. Critics were divided, with some dismissing it as exploitation and others recognizing its surprising depth. Roger Ebert wrote, "What begins as a preposterous thriller somehow transforms into a genuinely thought-provoking moral puzzle." The film's willingness to use genre trappings to explore serious historical trauma was ahead of its time. Mr. Klein, 1976. Joseph Losey's chilling psychological thriller stars Alain Delon as Robert Klein, an art dealer profiting from desperate Jews selling their collections in Nazi-occupied Paris. When he's mistaken for a Jewish man with the same name, his comfortable life unravels. As he tries to prove his Aryan identity, he becomes obsessed with finding his Jewish doppelganger. The film's genius lies in its subtle transformation of Klein from detached profiteer to hunted victim, experiencing the same dehumanization he once exploited. Lucien, himself blacklisted during the McCarthy era, creates disturbing parallels between bureaucratic persecution across different historical contexts. The film asks, how quickly would you abandon your principles if targeted by the same system you once benefited from? Critics now regard it as a masterpiece, though it was initially overshadowed by more conventional war films. Its exploration of identity, complicity, and the banality of evil feels increasingly relevant today. As one critic wrote, Mr. Klein shows how easily we can become what we claim to despise when self-preservation is at stake. Hitler, The Last 10 Days, 1973. Alec Guinness delivers a disturbingly human portrayal of Hitler during his final days in the Berlin bunker. Rather than the raving lunatic of propaganda, Guinness shows a man alternating between delusional optimism, petty cruelties, and moments of terrifying lucidity. The film's claustrophobic setting mirrors the collapsing Nazi empire outside. What makes the film controversial is its refusal to portray Hitler as a cartoon villain. Guinness studied footage of Hitler extensively and captures his strange charisma alongside his monstrosity. One scene shows him warmly congratulating a child soldier, moments before casually discussing the extermination of Berlin's remaining civilians, a juxtaposition more chilling than any simplistic evil. Critics were divided, with some concerned the film humanized Hitler too much. However, historian Ian Kershaw praised it, saying, "I could not imagine how a film of Hitler's last days could possibly be better done. By showing Hitler as human rather than mythic monster, the film serves as a disturbing reminder that history's greatest atrocities are committed not by supernatural villains, but by people who've abandoned their humanity step by incremental step." Downfall, 1974. A forgotten entry in the Hitler's bunker subgenre, Ennio De Concini's earlier take stars Alec Guinness as Hitler during the regime's collapse. While later overshadowed by the better-known 2004 German film of the same name, this version took remarkable risks by portraying the human side of Hitler's inner circle during their final days. The film's unflinching look at the cognitive dissonance of the Nazi leadership, planning phantom armies on maps while Russians advance through Berlin, creates a study in collective delusion. Guinness avoids caricature, instead showing Hitler as a failed artist whose murderous fantasies somehow conquered Europe. Simon Ward's portrayal of a young soldier gradually losing faith in Hitler provides the moral center. Critics praised its claustrophobic intensity, but questioned whether humanizing Hitler was ethically justified. The film remains controversial for suggesting that monsters are made, not born, and that under different circumstances, Hitler's pathologies might have remained those of a frustrated painter rather than history's greatest villain. Operation Daybreak, 1975. Louis Gilbert's taut thriller recreates Operation Anthropoid, the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, the butcher of Prague and architect of the final solution. The film follows the Czech and Slovak resistance fighters who parachuted into occupied Czechoslovakia to kill Heydrich, knowing their mission would trigger devastating reprisals against civilians. What elevates the film beyond standard war thriller is its focus on the moral calculus of resistance. Is killing one Nazi leader worth the thousands of civilian lives lost in retribution? The film refuses easy answers, showing both the necessity of fighting evil and the terrible human cost. The final stand in a Prague church, where the cornered assassins face hundreds of SS troops, ranks among cinema's most powerful last stands. Critics praised its documentary-like realism and moral complexity. Unlike many resistance films that portray heroism without consequences, Operation Daybreak forces viewers to confront the devastating price of fighting tyranny. As one historian advisor to the film noted, the tragedy is not that they killed Heydrich, but that he needed killing in the first place. The 1970s forever changed how we see World War II on film, stripping away patriotic myths to reveal the complex, often morally ambiguous reality beneath. From Patton's glory-seeking to Cross of Iron's grim brutality, these films pushed audiences to question not just how wars are fought, but why. Which of these forgotten classics shocked you the most? Drop a comment below with your pick for the most underrated war film from the list, or tell us which one we criminally left out. After all, isn't the real battle deciding which film truly captured the war's devastating truth?